Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to November and episode number 86 of the White Knuckle Podcast, powered by Ozonics. Undetectable, undeniable. Thanks again for tuning back into the White Knuckle Podcast. Today was a really fun show to record. I met a couple of guys here recently via White Knuckle, and they actually set out to kill a deer this last week and did so largely using Dan Infalt's tactics and I guess everything that you'd learn from watching the Hill Country bedding video. So I decided to ask them to come on the show. They agreed, and I also surprised them with a little bit of a visit from Dan Infalt, which was also pretty cool. So it was neat to have Dan hear the feedback that these guys had after listening to him for so long and soaking up all of the content that Dan has put out there over the last few years, and honestly giving a lot of himself. So with that, here is my interview with Josh and Caleb and Mr. Dan Infalt. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the White Knuckle Podcast. Tonight, I've got a couple of guys that are guests that are joined with me that I ran into via, White Knuckle Productions. And Caleb and Josh, welcome to the show. How's it going tonight?
Doing really well.
Good. Caleb, you had some luck this week, and it sounds like when that's the reason we're all here, I guess, is you had some luck this week, and when you were telling me the story, it pretty much sounded like I said to you, a textbook Dan Infalt story, and it, kind of the way Dan Infalt would have attacked it, and I heard the story, and I knew from that moment on that it was definitely something that our listeners would want to hear and listen how you basically went into this property blind and did so based on what limited scouting you had, and I'll let you lead in with the story. But before I do that, I just wanted to give you guys a heads up that we got somebody else on the line. Dan.
Hey, Caleb. Hey, Josh. Hey, Dan.
Hey, Dan. How's it going?
It's going good. I heard you killed a good one. Yeah, we did. It's tough because I don't feel like I killed him by myself. I feel like Josh and I, it's everything we've done, every step we've taken has been a team effort. That's cool. Those good partners are hard to find. Yeah, they're hard to come by.
It helps we're brother-in-law,
so go ahead and take us through and let Dan know kind of how you guys got to where you're sitting behind a buck in a picked cornfield or soybean field. I don't remember which one it was, but regardless, it was a heck of a deer, and just take us through that process, and then I'm sure Dan will have some questions, or you guys will have some questions for Dan, or I'll have some questions. But go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Really this all had started last year at the peak season of scouting, about March. Josh and I had acquired a property together, and we knew that what we're trying to do is shoot mature deer consistently every single year. The problem with where we have been hunting is, a lot of things is out of our control. We can't control the pressure, stand locations, things like that. So Josh and I set out to try and find some new properties, some new ground, to try and take a stab at. So lo and behold, we had this property come through, kind of fell in our laps, to be honest with you. We didn't get this property until September, unfortunately, late September. So we really did not want to put any pressure on this property. We knew that there hadn't been anybody hunting it. There aren't any houses around it. You can't see it from the road. It's kind of one of them properties that are just kind of a hidden gem. We did very, very limited scouting. We picked our days. We picked the days based upon the wind of where we looked at it on a topo map, where we thought the bedding areas were and what the best winds were going to set up for that. I think the key to our scouting early season is we picked rainy days. We waited until we could find, a few travel corridors, put some trail cameras up on those rainy days, and we wanted our scent to wash away. I set a camera up. It took a picture of me walking away, and 25 minutes later, there was a buck on that camera. So Josh and I both had one thing we really wanted to do was basically, put as little amount of pressure on this property as we possibly could. We were scouting it in early October, and we were walking up a waterway in the field, and out of the corner of our eyes, we could see 2 deer. So we got down, and we were trying not to bump them, and we could tell it was a couple of nice deer. So we backed out of there. We had a feeling this was so we looked at the clock, and it was at noon. It was dead middle of the day. So we knew that those deer were close to their bedding areas. We waited a couple of weeks, and when scrapes really started to open up, we picked another rainy day and moved our cameras and shifted them to scrapes. Lo and behold, out of the first card pull, we had 4 different shooters that we deemed to be mature deer. It's tough when you have zero history with these animals to try and age them. We did our best to try and, okay, 4.5 or 5.5. And I think we did all right as far as the deer that I shot this year. So there's a scrape up on a ridge road that is a funnel in between 2 bedding areas. There's a bean field on one side, and it leads into a bedding area. And this buck that we have named Grizz, he's a really big 8-pointer. He's a beautiful deer, super dark chocolate rack, and just a gorgeous animal. He was hitting that scrape consistently on a daylight pattern with a southwest or west wind. So any variation of a south wind that we've had up to that point, he was hitting that scrape in the morning during daylight going back to bed. So we made a move on him, and we hung the tree stand, and I hunted at the very next southwest wind, and he was there, but he was there 45 minutes or half an hour before I got there. So he had just moved through just a little bit too early. So it felt like, that I went out, was it Monday morning? Yeah, yesterday morning. And I went out yesterday morning. Me and Josh had talked about it. We felt like that the pattern had kind of shifted, and we knew we needed to move that tree stand. And I went into his bedroom, where we believed was his bedroom, and picked out, I wanted to be on the top side of that bedroom because I felt like if they were bedding, they were going to be bedding there, looking down, where you can see everything coming in and out of the bedrooms. I'm on the top side of that bedroom, in between both of them on the 1/3 line. And lo and behold, he came in, he bedded down right behind me about 15 yards. And he was bedded there for about 15 minutes, which allowed me to get turned around and situated enough to try and figure out, I did a hanging hunt, so I didn't cut any limbs or anything like that. I had no shooting lanes that I had manufactured. I had to basically, hope that he was going to stand up into an opening, and he did. And I put a good shot on him, and he went about, 40, 50 yards. And
my question
that's that.
For you guys is, what part of the scouting you did previous to that, and I know you said a couple different things. You felt like he was bedding there. What led up to all that? What was it? Just terrain features? Because I know we talked a lot about terrain features, and Caleb, you said you went in there in the dark and you hung based on what you had looked at on a map. And when you had said that, it just reminded me of Dan's video in Hill Country Bedding, where Dan, don't you don't you mark out some obvious areas that you're going to head to? And I think you went right in there and marched right up the hill or down the hill or whatever the case was. And didn't you shoot a tree? Not to bring up a bad subject, but
yeah, I shot a tree. Yeah. Are you referring to me and that buck in the hill video? Yeah. Yeah. Going in the morning is tough. I mean, you got to be pretty accurate. But it sounds like they pulled it off. I mean, going in there, did you guys walk in there first or?
No,
So you did it all from a map in the dark? You got in there?
Well, see, on the leaf-off map, you can see that there's a ridge road or an old logging road that comes up, and it's right. And if you look at it off this, what I consider a secondary ridge, it looks there's a logging road that comes up, and I knew that was right in the wheelhouse of where they're bedding at. I wasn't sure exactly what it was going to look like when I went in there. Now, when I went in there that morning, I mean, I had a shadow because the moon, it was so bright out, luckily. But I really felt confident about getting in there and being able to put a move on it because the last time that I moved one of the trail cameras after they had harvested the beans is I did it with my truck because I felt like that was the least amount of intrusion as far as bothering any of them deer. They're going to see me drive by, and that's about it. Well, when I went by, I was scouting out trees because I knew I wanted to be in there, and I knew that there was big timber in there enough that I could get up high enough and be able to, shoot down. And what I was looking for when I went down that road, I had a flashlight with me, and I was looking for a travel corridor going across that road because that road basically splits two different bedding areas. So what I was looking for was a trail coming across. So I knew if I found that trail that I could get back up into that bedding area and catch them coming back and forth.
Yeah, and we're constantly looking at topo maps and aerial imagery. I mean, sending each other pictures on our phones. The book Mapping Trophy Bucks changed my life. Like that, put everything in perspective. And being in the driftless area in Wisconsin, like these whitetails are hard to hunt down here, and to be able to pull something off like Caleb did the other day is just what we've been putting all of our work into for the last year.
Yeah, you got to get pretty good at reading maps and stuff to pull that off. I can do it, but probably half of the time I end up screwing something up. But half the time you're in the right spot. It's a heck of a setup.
Yeah, sometimes you just gotta risk it. And Caleb made an excellent call Monday morning, and it was everything we've been waiting for. And it's not just reading the topo maps; it's learning what the wind is going to do and the thermals are going to do, because there's some crazy stuff that happens in these hills with your scent, and it's hard to fool those bucks. I'm sure Dan.
Yeah, that's a gratifying hunt to go into new property like that the first year, getting there in September and pull a hunt off like that. That's really cool.
It's just one of those properties I've been looking at for a long time, and Caleb went and talked. I actually live right down the street from the landowners, and Caleb went and talked to them. And we went out early October for a scouting mission, saw those two bucks out eating in the beans, heard the noon whistle go off, and it was just like, holy crap, we need to be here.
And that's the other thing that too, we've really been able to see the difference of zero pressure on what these mature bucks are willing to do during daylight. I've never been able to have card pulls be so, show us so much daylight activity ever since we got there.
Yeah. I see that a lot because I'm not mostly public for the challenge, but when I look at farms for people and stuff, and I've hunted some ranches too, like Andre's place and stuff, and the difference between deer movement and stuff is incredible. I think a lot of people don't understand that. I mean, a 4-year-old deer on a piece of public property is a whole different animal than a 4-year-old deer on unpressured property. They just get free and easy about moving in daylight.
Yeah.
But pressure's a huge deal. I mean, if you can control that pressure, and it sounds like you guys did a great job of that.
Yeah, the other thing is, too, a lot of just like being able to see those deer and see what the actual results of no pressure will do. You know, I mean, it's no different than, you know, taking those tactics that you have preached about, that 1/3 line on the leeward side of the hill, you know, and getting into bedrooms like that until you do it and you can see how it works. You know, it's tough to kind of put those two and two together, but, you know, Josh and I have done you know, and I feel like I'm pretty proud of it. You know, we took all the knowledge that we can gain from you guys and, you know, everybody out there that's, you know, putting all that stuff. We're sponges, you know, we're students of the game and just trying to, you know, apply that to our season.
Yep, you always got to keep learning.
And one of my big things is like, you know, we always pay attention to what you say, Dan, and what Jason and Todd are saying, and, you know, we soak all that in, but when it comes down to it, every farm's different. I mean, I was hunting on my parents' farm this morning, and nothing is going on there, it seems like, where all these bucks are running crazy on this farm that Caleb shot his buck on just, you know, 20 miles south. So just being able to adapt. Adaptability.
When you guys say adaptability, and Dan, you probably have to deal with that a lot. I was on your forum and I saw someone ask the question, I don't know whether it was yesterday or the day before, but, you know, what do I do if someone's in a piece that I had, you know, planned on hunting? And, you know, pretty much everybody said vacate it, you know, or I think the person had some history in there, and you're having to make those decisions on the fly. That presents probably a whole different set of challenges, but there's challenges that, you know, even I've encountered this year on a new lease that I didn't expect, like, you know, horses getting out and things like that can happen. But one of the things that I wanted to ask about is that I think often people have a misconception of is the wind. And Dan, you've been a great student of the wind. I can remember in some of your first videos, particularly, I think, I don't remember what it was, but you were sitting over a water hole, or was it Andre that was sitting over a water hole? But whatever the case, can you just, Dan, take us through what you've learned about wind and on a very base level, what is it going to do in the mornings and the evenings?
Well, you know, if you're hunting hills, it's going to drop to the lower areas in the evening. It doesn't even have to be hills. It just has to have any kind of elevation change. It's going to drop to the lower areas as soon as there's a shade on the ground, and as soon as the sun comes up and starts heating the ground, your scent and the thermals are going to rise uphill. You know, that's the basics to it. But the truth of the matter is that no matter what they predict or whatever, every little spot, your wind can change it by like 45 degrees. It can change based on the tree terrain, the ground terrain, and all kinds of stuff. You get good at it, you can start reading that. But the best way is to really, you know, I preach it all the time, but I think people don't get it, is to use milkweed, because you really see how the wind flows with that. And after a while, it starts getting in your head. You can already predict what it's going to do, you know?
I agree 100%, Dan. That's one thing we picked up from you, too, is like, you know, everybody's got their little bottles with the, you know, baking soda or whatever that pops out. And, you know, sure, that goes where the wind's going. But around here for us, it's like dropping milkweed really shows where our scent is going. You know, I've been doing that a lot this year, and it's just crazy how different it is from what your Weather Channel app says on your phone. And, you know, so I know so many people that just look at that
and calm from wind. You know, you think about the guys who blow that dust bottle, and they're like, well, okay, there's no wind right now. When the wind blows, it's going one direction. When it's calm, it's going a different direction because of thermals. You know, and you don't see that unless you have milkweed.
I've noticed around here with the hills that we have, you know, if it's anything under 3 or 5, you got 100% to play the thermals. And, you know, you may say a 5 mile an hour wind at southwest, but you're going out for an evening sit and it's sucking right down the gully behind you, right where all you know, you're expecting that big buck to walk.
So how is it that you guys go into a place, Dan or Caleb or Josh? How is it that you guys go into a place and get up in a tree that you don't know exactly what things are going to do? Is there terrain features for any of you guys that you key off of prior to even going in there? You know, because Dan, you're hunting a lot of different kinds of terrain, whether it's you know swamps or whatever, but it's all public ground, so you're all over the place. Is there anything that is hard and fast?
I'm always setting up based on thermals. Always. If there's any kind of elevation, I am for sure, because that's the one thing you can. That's the one. Always. you don't want to use those words, but this is the thing that's going to always be there is the thermals. You can't expect the wind to always do the same thing. You can't expect deer to always do the same thing, but those thermals are always there. They're always going to drop when that sun goes down, and they're always going to rise when it gets hot. So I set up in relationship to the thermals, and usually the wind ain't going to override it, or you're going to get calm spots, and it's going to pull it down there anyway. So that's the hardest part about hill country is you have to set up based on at least 2 winds.
And when you say 2 winds, what exactly do you mean, Dan?
The actual wind and the thermal current, and sometimes 3. I mean, if you're going to sit for several hours, you might have a thermal rise that's going to turn into a thermal drop, and you got the wind.
Yeah, ever since I started putting a lot of this stuff together, it's like, I would sit, I'd take 2 weeks off work, and I will sit in a good stand all day, but it's like, now when you first get there in the morning, the sun's down, your thermals are pulling down the gully or the hill, and then the sun starts to rise, they're going up, and then you sit there all day and they're going back down. So, I mean, is that really a good spot to sit? Probably not.
All-day sits are not a good idea in hill country, or in country where you're going to have that kind of terrain?
Honestly, for myself, I mean, I can't speak for these 2 guys, but for me, it's always been better to move a few times during the day because I think certain areas have certain timing on when they have deer movement. And in rut and hill country, I like to be low in the mornings. When that thermal's dropping before daylight, they seem to be down at the bottom of those hills a lot. And it's more towards the heat of the day that they're up on a 1/3 elevation cruising. And generally, I'm trying to hit those bedding areas too. So I like to hit the bedding areas in the morning sometimes, and then move to a cruise area, then move back to bedding like in the evenings.
I don't have the bucks like Dan does on the ground to prove that, but I got trail camera pictures that does, and it's like the more I'm kind of piecing all this stuff together, it's like that's the move to make during the rut. I mean, sit all day, but maybe move a stand or 2. Sit in that good stand down in that, ditch or whatever in the morning, and then kind of move up the hill. And I really think that's something I'm going to strive to try this year, and I feel like it'd be successful because I don't know how many times I've been on that 1/3 line, from 7 a.m. till noon and seen bucks not cruise that till 10:30, 11 o'clock.
Yep. That's what got me going on that is sitting up on that thing every time in the mornings. I'd see them at the bottom, and then you go down to the bottoms and midday they're up in the up on that 1/3,
Yeah, I can remember one hunt in particular last year where I had the same thing. One of our best spots. This is on my dad's farm, just about 20 miles north of where me and Caleb live, and kept seeing a bunch of nice bucks down in the ditch early in the morning, and then I was sitting there about 10 o'clock, an absolute, probably 175-inch 10-pointer comes running through, and it's a long story, but I never got a shot at him, but, he at 10 o'clock, 10:30, he's cruising that 3rd line just off the hill, and it's like, okay, that's when it's like, that started clicking for me, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the best things you learn are usually from your failures.
You got to learn from your observations too. I think so many guys, just they see a deer and they just, I saw a deer, and they get caught up in the moment. But I'm always thinking about why is that deer doing that? Because if it's a mature buck, he ain't doing anything on accident. They're in a spot for a reason, and if you're seeing it on a repetitive basis, there's some reason that's going on. And what I've assumed with the hills is that it's always before thermal rise that I see them down at the bottom. The thermals are still kind of dropping.
So you guys have obviously knocked it out of the park with this first property. You got Dan on the other line. What questions would you like to ask Dan? As long as we can abuse the time that we've got with him, what questions do you have for Dan? Because I can promise you, I've got nothing to add to this conversation.
Well, it's tough. I mean, we know that, the biggest thing that I think Josh and I both are striving to do. Dan, you've got a lot of content out there, and we really like a Bible, but it's one thing to have you say, this is where a buck is bedding, or this is where they travel. Another thing to go and apply that to your own hunting. I think Josh and I have really been trying to, figure it out. Like Josh said, every property is different. Trying to figure out how we can hunt this property. It's going to be different than another property that we apply it to.
Yeah.
And just trying to figure out.
One of the biggest things I hear is a lot of guys will come back at me and they'll be like, well, it didn't happen like you said or something. And it's not 100%. And like you said, you have to be able to understand it, that it's like a basic principle, and you have to be able to apply it. And most of the time it'll happen like that. But when it's not, you have to be able to say, well, it's not doing that here for some reason, and be able to move over,
Yeah, and figure out why.
Yeah, because and as easy as it's like, it seemed like as I don't want to say easy because it's never easy, but as easy as we could, we figured out where these bucks are bedding. We know where that big 8-pointer is bedding. We know where this buck Caleb shot is bedding, and we know where another bigger 10-pointer out there is bedding. But like my dad's farm, just north of here, it's like I got a buck that I have 3 years history with, and I've never had more trail camera pictures and encounters with a deer in my life and not been able to figure anything out about that deer. And it's like I spend hours studying maps and reading things, and it's just like I cannot figure this deer out. I mean,
I run into that too. I mean, I had a giant that was like just shy of Boone and Crockett last year that I got in trail camera constantly in one spot. And honestly, I had no idea where he was coming from or going to. And sometimes he's going the opposite direction in the morning than the evening, and the next day he's going the opposite direction. And I'm like, I have no idea where he's going. But he would show up in daylight, and I just, that happens. And sometimes you can read it like a map, and you know exactly where he is, and you take a guess, and you're right, Yeah,
because as soon as, I think I figure this deer out, he shows up on a camera completely opposite of what I was thinking, and I just look at my dad, and we shake our heads. It's like, I mean, he's a giant. He's probably, I don't know, Caleb. I mean, not that I really care, but he's probably 180s, and I've been chasing him for 3 years, and it's just like I have so much history. I mean, Buck, he's probably got 12 lives out of him, so, I mean, it's one of those things.
That's what keeps us going.
Well, you guys,
exactly. That's why we do it.
Basically, hit the nail on the head in terms of what I had hoped that would come out of this. And after talking to Caleb, I think it was yesterday, I realized that I guess the realization that I had was what a lot of people don't have, and that this isn't an exact science. And that's the one thing that I wanted. I would hope would come out of tonight.
I think a lot of guys look at what I do, and they look at that wall of bucks, and they think I walk out there anytime I want and I shoot a big buck. But I fail just as much as anybody else. It's just that, through a lot of work and a lot of hunting, I get my target usually. But
I think that all
see 20 hunts in a row where I don't get crap.
Yeah. Dan, you're the king. You're the king of adaptability and the king of a lot of things we've talked about tonight, and it's, you get stuck in that rut, and you go to over liable or whatever, and it's, I've had this stand here for 20 years and always seen good bucks out of it, but it's like, how many bucks have we killed out of it? It's like, deer are different every year and every property is different, and just being able to move is our key.
Yeah. The other
they'll
thing,
figure it out over time too. Like you hunt at least for 10 years, and all of a sudden those prime bedding areas will start to peter out. I mean, it's like those animals, by the time they get mature, they start figuring out those are being hunted. That's why it's kind of the way we hunt. Going into a new property that hasn't been hunted, like say beast style, and you go in there the first time, and you have a lot better success. I have a lot better success going to a new property than properties I've hunted for years, because I tend to hunt them the same way. I know where the bedding is, and I know how they're going to come out of it. And Yeah, it's like those big ones just disappear off of that stuff. I mean, the real big ones. I mean, you can get those average, 130-inch bucks year after year after year out of those spots, but the giants seem to figure you out.
Yeah, and that's the one thing too. Todd Pringus said it on a earlier podcast is, what are you willing to do and what are your goals? I mean, Josh and I both, we sat down and talked about it. This is what we want to do. We want to shoot mature deer consistently every single year. So we need to do, what other guys are not willing to do in order to shoot the biggest deer that are running around on these ridges.
I mean, look at my top bucks. They're all taken in crazy spots where nobody would ever hunt. Some big willow tree out in a, pasture, or, I sneak up on him in his bed and kill him in his bed. It's stuff that nobody would ever dream of hunting, and it seems like you gotta be willing to do, just like what Todd said, whatever it takes. You gotta figure it out and stop doing that routine and thinking inside the box.
Yeah, Todd totally nailed all that on the head with that that seminar he did at the I forget what show that was here in Wisconsin, but I listened to that podcast.
Deer Fest.
Yeah, I listened to that podcast, and I actually went back and re-listened to it, and it's just like, I think that's key.
Years ago, Todd used to come out here and he'd hang out at Andre's place, and we'd be there, and Andre was the king of that. He's really the one who installed that in me. But he'd go do this crazy crap like that and kill those bucks, and that's what made me start hunting in that direction. Because and Todd was there during that time period. But he would go out and he'd hunt right over the top of a dirt road that people are walking and jogging on and stuff, and he'd say, well, that's where the buck is. You're like, you're not going to shoot nothing there. And then he shoots this giant buck there. And I can remember one time when he hit a buck bedded on this hill, and we were both hunting it. And we kept going around the sides trying to get this thing. He wouldn't come out in daylight. He'd just come out a little bit, and you get glimpses of him just enough to tease you. And one day he walks in there, and he walks upwind of that bedding area on purpose and walks right past that buck, like 50 yards from it, and does this huge circle and goes down and sets up on the bottom of it and shoots the thing 20 minutes later. And he goes, well, I figured if he smelled me, he'd get nervous, but he'd stay there until I got around. And he goes, I figured he'd go out the other way because he wouldn't want to go where he smelled me. And he killed it. I mean, and he called it. He was going to do that. I mean, but that whole way of thinking, at least you're trying something. You know what I mean? You're out there not just sitting there like, well, which stand should I go to? Yeah. You're actually trying something. You're actually hunting instead of sitting stands. You know what I'm saying? Sitting stands and hoping.
Yeah. See, and that's the other thing, too. The whole reason why we decided to dive into this bedding area is because we're not, we're trying to shoot these deer. We're not trying to sit on the edges and just see them. Seeing them is great, but we're trying to get shots at them. And very well could have, I could have set up a little bit too high or too low, or, he could have came in 5 yards further and been able to smell me and blown him out of there. But you know what? I'm right there. You got to be in the game.
Right. So, and I would have done the same thing. And I mean, what you did would probably fail most of the time, going in there in the morning and trying to hunt. But if it works 1 out of 10, it's pretty good odds. It's better odds than going sit in stands and rotating through a place,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
Why? I'm curious. Why do you feel that that's? I realize it's good odds, but why do you feel like you're going to fail most of the time?
Because you're going in there, you're playing with that thermal, that wind, and where he's going to walk, getting there without smelling you and getting in a tree. But I'd have done the same thing he did. I mean, I think that's a great idea to slide in there and try it. Yeah. I would try to make a plan that, okay, how do I think the deer's going to go in there? Which he did. He was talking about how the trail crosses the road. And I'd be thinking about how the thermal's going to work, how the wind's going to work. And I'd probably be doing what he was doing too, trying to look at the horizon and see trees and picking one. I think he did it the exact same way I would do it. But most of the time you go in there and it fails. Most hunts fail, period.
Yeah.
Well, true.
But, you've got to get aggressive like that to kill stuff. I truly believe, these guys that got 5 or 10 stands on their property and they rotate through them, you'd have better odds at mature bucks. Maybe not your 130 inches, but your actual mature bucks, you'd have better odds throwing a dart at the map and making yourself sit wherever it landed.
Yeah.
Because at least it puts you in a fresh spot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I've witnessed that firsthand. It's like, you can kill a mature buck every 3, 5, 6, 8 years, but if you want to do it consistently, you want to kill one every year, like between me and Caleb, kill one every year, you got to just, basically do what you do, Dan, and just figure it out on the fly and get out there and yeah, sure, it fails 9 times out of 10, but what's the odds of you sitting in a stand you've had in this tree for 10 years? Probably a lot less.
When I was younger, it was different on how we taught our kids to hunt. Nowadays everybody caters to their kids. They got a special kid season and all that stuff. But when I grew up, they used to make you earn your spot in deer camp. Okay, that's Uncle Tom's spot. This is where Mike sits. This is where Dad sits. You're new here. You can go somewhere down there. And they give you some area where nobody hunts. It's no good, and you had to earn your spot in camp. And that's the way it was back in like the 70s, 80s. And you would constantly see these young kids kill these absolute giants. and it was happening so often that you'd wonder, there's got to be something up with this. And I think it was because it stuffed that kid in a spot where nobody would hunt. Because back then, the deer were looked at as food, and everybody had to get a deer, and I didn't think this kid was going to do anything. So the 12-year-old or 13-year-old kid that was on his first hunt would get stuffed down in the corner, like over by the road or something, where they didn't really think anybody would ever shoot a deer there, but they said, well, maybe you'll get one over there, And they put them there where nobody hunts. And you'd see this continuously. These kids would shoot these giant bucks the first time they ever hunted.
Makes total sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The other thing is, too, the thinking process has changed a lot, with, like, being able to see your content and stuff like that out there. But, there's still a generation out there that, you send a kid into a spot and he shoots a big buck, well, you just chalk it up to luck. Well, there's a reason that, like you said before, like there's a deer moving through there, So figuring out why they're doing what they're doing, that's what we love to do, and, that's what we wrap our brains about and stay up all night thinking about.
So I've got a question for I guess Josh. Caleb, you're out of the picture now because your tag is filled. You're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere out of state, right?
No.
He's going back to work.
By the way, okay. I could use a cameraman for Iowa, but just throwing it out there. Dan and Josh, I'm curious to hear. In the next 10 days, the woods is going to change every, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 days here for the next 10 to 15 days. Whoever, what's your plan going forward, Dan? And then Caleb, or excuse me, Josh, you can fill in after that. What's your tactics going to be, Dan?
My tactics ain't going to change a whole heck of a lot. Right now, I'm really watching the sign pickup, because a lot of the deer are going to start laying down a lot of sign, and when you see it fresh coming out of bedding, it's a good thing. So I'm going to go out and do some scouting on foot, follow some transition lines and such, and try to pick up, scrape lines, big tracks, big rubs, that kind of stuff, and sit it while it's hot the same day I find it. I'm going to try and do a lot of that. I'm also going to go hit some really thick, small cruising areas between doe bedding where people don't normally go, and that kind of stuff. And I think I'll get more into the cruising a little bit next week. But I still do better on the mature bucks by hunting like rut bedding, adjacent to doe bedding. But right now, I'm really not onto any mature bucks. I don't know what happened to them. I was onto a bunch last year, and they just seem like they're gone this year on the properties I can hunt. I got onto one a couple weeks ago, and the neighbors on two sides shot big bucks that ran through the bedding area, and everything kind of dried up. And one of them might be the buck that I was onto. So I don't know. I gotta locate a deer and kill it. Is what I gotta do.
That's probably not the loftiest goal you've got this year.
Yeah, it's a little frustrating year. I mean, after the year I had last year, which was not a very good year, but I got onto a lot of big bucks. This year I'm not getting onto any, but I'm out there pounding it and trying, and I'm purposely choosing properties that are public and pressured and hard to hunt, and because of that, it's hard to get onto those big bucks sometimes. Work gets in the way. You got to lose that job thing, and
right. You mentioned something there, Dan, about finding the sign. When I've heard you say often that if you can find a rub that's hip high or better, no matter what the diameter of the tree, it's a good deer. And you also mentioned finding a big track in a scrape, and you're talking about finding a lot of that stuff in and around the bedding cover, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a big rub makes a little difference if it's out in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of an open woods or something, or a field edge, or where it matters is if it's coming out of perceived bedding, because then it's made in daylight, or potentially made in daylight. It
would be safe to say then a rub is more valuable in the timber this time of year, or it gives you a clue that you're closer to them.
I don't know about timber, but it has to be near what I would perceive as bedding.
Josh, what's your plan? This is going to air Monday morning. A lot of guys and gals are going to be hitting the woods full bore. What are you going to do? Or should they just follow you around?
Well, they probably follow Caleb or Dan, but no, I got my vacation started Monday, so I got the next 2 weeks off. I think I got a couple more hunts, back at the home place before I totally give up on that, or before I kind of shift my gear on that buck. Otherwise, I hung a stand today out at one of our father-in-law's properties that, it's actually right next to where they cut through for the high tower power lines, and it's just real brushy underneath, and it just seems like really great bedding in between a couple egg fields. And Caleb and I and our I guess you'd say cousin-in-law, but we've been friends with him before he was our cousin-in-law. We found a gigantic scrape right there, put a camera on it, so I went and hung a stand there today, and just waiting for a good wind to hunt that, or maybe get back out to this property where Caleb shot his buck. I got a few things up my sleeve. It just kind of depends on what shows up on camera and stuff, and what we get for weather. I don't know. I've been looking at the weather like more than a weatherman, I think, and the weather doesn't seem as ideal as I'd hoped for around here. But I guess we'll work with it. Hopefully we can get another one down. And it's already been a great year for me and Caleb as far as I consider it. And me getting one would just be a bonus, but we're going to try our hardest and just kind of bounce around, I think, and stay mobile. From everything, it's just like putting stuff together over the last couple of years and learning from Caleb's hunt. It's like, I think that's our biggest path to success, I guess, if that's what you want to call it, or harvesting that buck that we want to harvest every year is staying mobile, especially around here, and just that surprise hunt, I guess.
Yep. Catch 'em by surprise.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't let me fool you here, there, Jason. Just because my tank is full, I'm still going to be. I got a lot of work ahead of me. Whether it's analyzing photos or, helping Josh do whatever. And that's the other thing too. I want to mention is, we're so fortunate to have each other, because everything that goes through my head, I bounce off Josh, And if I'm missing something, I mean, he picks it up right now, and he's on top of it, and vice versa. So my season, I'm tagged out, but my season's far from over.
Right on. Dan, do you find that whether it's Mario or Jeff or any of those, do you find it's beneficial to have somebody to bounce stuff off of?
Yeah, it is. But you got to make sure somebody you trust. I mean, I've seen a lot of people who, at first you think you can trust them, or you think they're a good friend, and later you find out they got a big mouth or something. And it really is hard to find good people to hunt with. And I'm fortunate I got a few friends that I really trust. But deer bring out, especially big deer, bring out some funny things with people. I've seen friendships end over. I've seen marriages end over. I've seen, families break up over deer hunting. I mean, it's crazy what people will do over deer. So having that special connection that the two of you got is special, and you guys should cherish that.
We've been friends. We actually went to high school together and then ended up marrying sisters, so we got pretty lucky there. But, we've known each other for a long time, and really this year is the first year we've really had properties like this where we can completely be independent on and say, hey, what do you think about this? And what do you think about this? And it's been awesome. And obviously it's not even November, and we're on an all-time high right now.
I think one of the best benefits you guys got is that you knocked that buck down right away, because that's going to give you the confidence and motivation to keep doing what you're doing. When you go a season or two before you get onto something like that on a new property, sometimes the doubts slip in.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's good that you guys were able to go in there and make a move like that and kill that thing. I think that confidence thing is huge.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I was sitting one of my best stands at my dad's place yesterday for this time of year, and sitting there, and it is actually my anniversary, so my phone started ringing. I'm like, who is calling me right now? And I looked and I saw Caleb, and I knew right away. It's like I didn't even answer the phone. I was getting out of the stand to come help him. So, it's awesome.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
The only time you smile when you're called to be a pallbearer, right?
Exactly. Dan, you spent a lot of time in the last couple of years, really just pouring yourself into educating people as best you can through all the different content, whether it's hill country books or swamp bedding or all the different videos that you got out there. How gratifying is it just to hear about the work that you've done and know that it's paying off for some people? Well,
it's gratifying, but I mean, it's not something I dwell on. But I do take satisfaction in trying to turn the way hunting is going around. I would like to see more people hunt the correct way and have more fun out there and actually hunt deer rather than farm them or rotate through stands or whatever, and make it more exciting for people. I think that'll keep deer hunting alive for many generations. And I think it's a better image of hunters to actually hunt. And I'm just trying to do my part, and I like it. I like to see the satisfaction, and I mean, who doesn't like to have, get messages and emails and stuff like, hey, I just got my best buck, and it's because something you told them or something, and it's cool shit. And I like it.
And let me talk for Caleb here, Dan. We appreciate everything you do. I mean, like I said, we're sponges, especially when it comes to stuff like, stuff that you and guys that we consider legends put out. And it's just, it's fun to watch it come to fruition for us.
Well, make sure you pass it on, and,
absolutely
help some kid learn to hunt at some point in time or something.
Good advice right there from the hunting beast himself, Mr. Dan Infalt. Thanks to Caleb, Josh, and Dan for doing the show. I hope you guys and gals all had a good time listening in, and hope you can apply whatever it was that you may have picked up as a little nugget of information this upcoming week here as we roll into I guess, hot and heavy rut time. I will be down at Todd's at some point during this week, and we'll be either doing a Facebook Live show or a podcast we'll record from down there, which will air a week from the day that this is airing. So if you'd like to see a Facebook Live show, shoot us a message on Facebook, and we'll try and put that together while we're down there. If you've got some ideas for what you'd like to hear Todd talk about, or a guest that might be in Iowa that we can get a hold of, we'll try and accommodate anybody's wishes. With that, I'll start to close out the show for today. Again, just a special thanks to Dan for taking the time out to surprise Josh and Caleb, and thanks to Josh and Caleb for taking the time to share their stories. I know they're both busy guys and have young families, and it's not always easy to take time out of your schedule. But they did it, and I'm appreciative of it, and hopefully you guys are as well. So with that, I'll just remind everyone again, our partner in this whole White Knuckle podcast is Ozonics, and if you haven't heard me say it 100 times before, they are now factory ship direct, and what that means is they can give you a great deal. And I think we're just about out of time, but we've got at least another week left on the White Knuckle bundle. And the way that you go about getting that is to go to their website, www.ozonicshunting.com/WKP, and that will take you to the White Knuckle Run and Gun bundle. I guess that's about all I have for this week. Everybody be safe out there, wear your harness, shoot straight, and good luck. Jason out.